Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we are here for a special sports edition of the Nightly News Podcast, something that we really hope to do coming up in 2020 while our number one president is still in the house for much of 2020. So we plan on doing these at least quarterly, having some different people who are involved in Central Penn College athletics to come down to the podcast studio and chat a little bit about what's going on. So today we are joined by Tyler Coleman. Tyler, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's always great to be here.
Well, I'm glad. That's the whole point of doing this, right? Also being joined by head men's soccer coach, Dustin Wise. Dustin, thank you very much for joining us on this fine afternoon.
You know, long-time listener, first-time caller kind of thing.
That's cool. And we're also being joined by Derrick Miller, one of the veteran players on the Central Penn Knights soccer team. Derrick, welcome to the show.
Veteran, I love that. Appreciate you for having me.
And I always have to point out, anytime somebody comes up here and says that they've never been on a podcast before, this is Derrick's first adventure into podcasting, so we'll try to go easy on you, my friend. We have a lot to talk about today. So obviously, soccer in the rearview mirror in 2019 season, 3-8-2 mark. But I do think that it was important to note a few different things. First of all, you fought hard, and anybody who watched any of your broadcasts from the Nightly News that we did could tell you that you were in almost every single game. In fact, I would probably say there was really only one game that got out of reach, and that was Christendom at the end. And you know, we can talk about that. But literally, outside of that game, there was no game that had more than a 3-goal differential, and that was only once, and then only two total games more than a 2-goal differential. So you were in almost all of these games. And in fact, in the first 3 games of last season, Penn State, Mont Alto, Penn State, York, and Penn State, Mont Alto again, you allowed a grand total of 2 goals. So while the record might not have necessarily been where you'd have hoped, you certainly were in all these games. How would you kind of wrap up your season?
I think you did a good job with it. Overall, I mean, yeah, those first 3 games, and you hate to look back and say, what if? But our first 3 games, we didn't have Sophie on, we didn't have Derrick Pine, and those 2 wound up being our 2 leading goal scorers and our leading assist guys. We didn't score a single goal in those 3 games, so we went 0-2-1. And, I mean, if you would have told me before the game, we're only going to allow 1 goal in this game, and tell you we're going to win the game, you know? So to get shut out in 3 straight games to start the season, that was a little rough. First game Sophion and Pine both played in, we won 4-2.
And Williamson Trade's one of those games that I wanted to talk to you about. So a great 4-2 victory. Was there anything that sticks out to you about that Williamson Trade game that you might want to bring back up and maybe use as a teaching tool going into 2020?
Whenever you look back, I mean, the second time we played Williamson Trade, we wound up losing. But the first game, they're a physical team. We played into that, but we kept our minds right for that game. It worked in our favor because then they started to struggle with it. The second time we played them, it kind of reversed the roles. They scored early, and then we kind of lost our cool. If you can keep your cool and you keep your composure, we're fine. I mean, and Derrick can attest to this, after the game at Williamson Trade that we lost, I was a little upset because we weren't how we were supposed to play. You know, these guys know, hey, keep your cool, and we're going to do well. The biggest thing with Williamson Trade, the first game, that was the second time in 16 games that we've beaten them.
I know, and that was one of the things did get to talk to Dylan Kleintop, former vice president of the Nightly News, and any of you podcast fans know Dylan well. He was the assistant coach for last year, and I did get a chance to talk to him about that. And I remember when we had him on last year, telling me about the first time that they had beaten Williamson Trade and how it was literally like one of the signature victories for Central Penn College athletics, not just soccer team, right, when that victory against Williamson Trade, I believe in the 2018 season. There was another big game that I wanted to talk about, and that was homecoming against Valley Forge, a 3-2 victory in the last minute of the game that we were victorious. Talk a little bit about that game and maybe some of the feelings that you took away from that.
It going into overtime and everything. I believe double overtime, was it? Yeah, it going into double overtime, and we were all drained. The other team was drained, but we just found something in ourselves to keep going, because it was senior night, and we had to represent the seniors and the school and everybody else that was watching, because that was, I think, our biggest crowd of the entire season. So we had to show our skills and show ourselves off, and we executed that well with a very late goal in double overtime.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it getting dark and you had to bring lights out onto the field to finish up?
Yeah, that was rough.
Have you ever had to do that before?
Oh, plenty of times during high school.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't. Again, I apologize that I'm not a little bit more well versed about soccer, but I've never seen something like that before. And the reason I knew that, unfortunately, I wasn't there that day, but I saw the pictures, and the pictures, you could see the lights in the background. You could see, everybody was in a good mood, but it was literally almost totally dark. And I can't even imagine that had to be the high note of your season, right?
It was. I mean, the thing was, so I stressed to these guys all season, I've never had a losing record at all with soccer, as a player, as a coach, until this year. But at that win, we still had hope to get to at least a 500 record, right? Well, halftime of the overtime, so going into the second overtime period, Sophion comes over because he's a little upset. He had an opportunity to score a game winner, had it saved. He comes over, gets a little teary-eyed. I'm like, look, you're the best player on this field right now. You're going to get another chance. You're going to finish. We're going to win. It's that simple. 5 minutes later, Sophion gets a chance, capitalizes, gets the goal. We win the game. The rest is history.
And one of the things I do want to talk about, obviously, is Sophion. 10 games played, 13 goals, 6 assists, 38 shots. I mean, he was just unstoppable. A shooting percentage of 34%. I mean, that's got to be unheard of, right?
Yeah, he had a great year. And I think a lot of outside perspective may be, he's just speed. But, I mean, you can go back and rewatch the game when we played against Penn State Beaver. He's not afraid to run down the sideline and then cut back, and he can shoot with either foot. He's not a one-dimensional player. He can beat you multiple ways.
Now, I want to talk about another person. That's Max Thorpe, senior. Was kind of thrust into the goalkeeper position.
1 minute into the first game of the season, the first time that Penn State Monado was coming down the field, already goes, makes a save. Something happens where I don't know if they went to kick the ball when he went to dive for it, winds up breaking his arm, had to have surgery, missed the rest of the season. After that game, we put Trenton Bradley in to finish that game. He was capable enough. We lost that game 1-0, but he then played the next night, 0-0 game, so had the shutout. After that, I was like, look, Trenton's very valuable to me on the field, so we're going to try to figure something out. Max being a senior, I kind of asked him, would you be willing to take on a goalkeeper role? Because I don't want to train somebody at goalkeeper and waste a year of development. So Max was more than willing to, and there were some games where you could tell that he's never played goalkeeper before, and there were some games that you had no idea that this kid hasn't been playing goalkeeper his whole life.
Well, and some of the shots that he stopped, and I'm specifically thinking of, I want to say the last game that we did was, I believe, Christendom, and even though there was a loss, some of the saves that he made in that game, I mean, highlight reel shots. What is it about a player who's never played a position before and being able to pick it up that quickly?
I think just work ethic's the big one. And it's funny because the match before that was when we played Valley Forge again. Now that one ended in a 2-2 draw, but he made a couple of saves in that game where the other coach for Valley Forge was like, your goalkeeper is really good. I was like, yeah, thanks. He just started playing like a month ago. It's crazy how much he developed, how quickly he developed. But he wasn't afraid to ask for help or see what he should do different. There's things we could have worked on here or there that could have helped him even more, but you can't really... There's not much you could have wanted differently out of him.
Right. So I'm going to throw this over to Tyler. Tyler, you had the opportunity to be a part of the soccer broadcasts. You were invaluable as the camera operator and just general. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes when we do these things. We have to get there pretty early, get set up, get ready to go. Because, a lot of times when you're in sports, sometimes they're kind of cognizant that you're there. And a lot of times, like, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a couple baseball games last year where they were first pitch was supposed to be 2:00. And, we're set up, we're ready. But their first pitch, remember there was at least two games that the first pitch was at like 1:45. And we're just kind of milling around and just kind of killing some time. And no one even came over and said, hey, we're going to start early. Like, so what were your impressions about having the opportunity to do soccer?
Well, I really appreciated the opportunity, when you approached me about it. I'm kind of in the same boat that you are, not knowing as much about soccer as I do other sports, so it was kind of good that we had Doug on board. But even just getting to run the camera, it was fun to do, get to stand there and watch the game. I think it went pretty well and hope to look forward to doing it again next season.
And we're hoping that that's not going to be an issue going forward. We kind of, with basketball this season, found a solution to that, hopefully. So, well, and I appreciate all of your hard work in the soccer season. Now, Derrick, talk to me before we move on from this season. Talk to me about maybe some of your own personal highlights or maybe some team highlights that before we close the book on 2019 that you'll always remember.
Personally, I think I will, just like the 2018 season when Doug was still a coach, I think I will remember everything about this season because there was a tremendous amount of ups and downs, lefts and rights, you name it. We had tremendous games and practices, and we had really bad games and practices, and everything going on for those months for the practices and the games was a huge learning experience for the players and the coaches. I really enjoyed playing with everybody on the team and the coaches that came in. Dylan stepping up as assistant coach, I really enjoyed seeing him come back and whatnot.
And I always ask, how difficult was it to have Dylan be the assistant coach after playing side by side with him previously? I mean, I know that cannot be easy. At 1 minute he's your peer. I mean, he always was a little older than you, so he was a little more senior member on the team. But how does that transition for someone in your place than when you're on the field and he's sort of more of an authority figure after you just played side by side for all that time?
Yeah, I talked to a couple of the teammates like in private, personal messages about that. It was awesome that he came back, and I enjoyed seeing him and whatnot. But I still kind of viewed him more as a friend than as a coach, because once I have a coach, I will always refer to them as coach. I refer to Dustin as coach, not Dustin, Mr. Wise or anything, just coach. And that's how I've been all my life. But when Dylan came in, I called him Dylan because that's what I was used to.
Right.
But it wasn't like he went easy on us or anything, because I really remember one practice when coach wasn't there and it was Dylan running all of us. He definitely stepped into the coaching shoes and really nailed down on us.
I think what's funny about Dylan is I've known Dylan, I want to say I had Dylan in his literally first college class ever. Walked in the door and he was in my class. And of course, obviously, over the years, I got to know him. He became a part of the club. He became a part of the broadcast. You know Dylan very well because you did a project with him with the baseball. So I know Dylan very well. I have never seen him act the way that he acted on the field, ever, and in a good way. I mean, it's a good thing to have a different personality, have a different mindset when you're on the field. As I played sports, and I can tell you, even to this day, I'm much more animated, much more lively when I'm on the field or I'm a big tennis player when I'm on the court. I get into it so much that I'm so in the zone that I'm nothing like I am normally just sitting down and chatting with you. And I will never forget one of the games. He just got so mad about a call. It almost literally looked like his brain was going to explode out of his head. I don't know if you remember the one I'm referring to. I think it was in the very last game. There was just a real bad call. And even Doug called it out. He's like, that was just a horrible call. I think at that point it was like 1-2-0 you were down. And then that really hurt you. And Dylan was just beside himself. But again, I think that's a good quality to have because, frankly, and Dustin, you can speak to this, part of the authority that you have is the enthusiasm and intensity that you have. If you, I guess when you think of somebody like Bill Belichick, he's very laid back. And, of course, he gets fired up on the sideline, but for the most part, he's pretty laid back. That's not your typical strength in a coach is to be laid back. It's to be the aggressor. It's to be intense. And it was just interesting to see that. What do you think about that? And maybe what were your experiences with Dylan this year in his first opportunity to coach?
Outside of sports, I'm probably the nicest, easiest going person you'll ever meet. Inside sports, you probably don't want to make me mad. I mean, that's one way to put it. But you mentioned Belichick, okay? So I'm a big Philadelphia Flyers fan. And their former coach was Dave Haxtell. And he would literally stand behind the bench, no expression on his face, nothing. He just stood there. He didn't get mad. He didn't get happy. For me, I don't know how that dude motivated players, which, I mean, now he got fired, so he probably didn't motivate players, but he just would stand there. And as a fan watching, I'm like, dude, why are you not angry? Like, you can tell everything is going wrong. Be something. There were a few times this year with Dylan that I had to tell him, dude, shush, like, just sit down. The one game we were at, he said something, and the ref even made a comment to him like, who are you? And I was like, just sit down. I got it, don't worry. Like, they at least know who I am. Like, we're good. I got it, But for the most part, he did. He did well this year. I have asked him to come back next year, more so as a volunteer assistant to keep him with the program because, like Derrick kind of pointed out, some of the players that have a hard time adjusting to him being a coach now and not just a buddy or whatever. So I have asked him to come back in that kind of role. But, yeah, I thought he did well. Things we talked about after the season, I wanted him to kind of work on moving forward. But, yeah, I was happy with how he did.
And Tyler, speaking of coaches, we get a front row seat for two of the most animated coaches in all of sports, and that would be men's basketball coach David Archer and women's basketball coach Chris Norkus. I got to tell you, the last ladies game that we did, Chris, he must have just, really took some chamomile tea or something because he was super laid back that day. Usually, in fact, the first game, when he was done, he didn't have a voice for like a week. Do you remember that? Like, how crazy is it to get to see that and to get to see how fired up these people get, Tyler?
Well, I kind of touched base on that on the broadcast that we did. When I was growing up, I liked playing for coaches like that. I liked playing for coaches that would, tell you, hey, good job, and then at the same time kind of get on you when you're doing wrong. But yeah, last night, Coach Norkus was pretty laid back, but then again, I guess that's kind of easy to do when you're in a game that's a blowout. But as we talked about last night, I think even though if you blow out a game or if you win a game that's really close, there's always going to be teaching points. So there's always going to be coachable moments and things that you could do better.
Speaking of coachable moments, I wanted to take a minute and read a little something from a recent Central station. This is earlier in January. The Knights men's soccer team took part in a training session a little different than what they were used to in the fall. Freshmen Derrick Pine, Trenton Bradley, Caleb Solis, and Jordan Heil accompanied Coach Dustin Wise at Sports City Athletics in Harrisburg to guest coach the Dauphin Middle Paxton Soccer U11 practice. So first of all, talk to me about how you got involved with this, Coach Wise, and tell me a little bit more about why you thought it was so important for your team to be a part of this experience.
So John Lucas is the head coach of the U11 team that we work with. He had emailed me back maybe right after Thanksgiving or so and asked if I'd be interested in guest coaching one of their practices. I mean, I've done some things similar to this in the past, but not since being here at Central Penn. So I asked him, can I bring some players along? I love getting out and, one, it helps promote our program. It helps promote the college. We do this for them. Now they're going to tell other people about it and vice versa. Now we can tell people that we did it and now people are aware of what their soccer club's doing. But I wanted to get the players involved, one, because I think it's a good opportunity for them to kind of be a role model. And sometimes I want these players to kind of realize that there's more to soccer than just being a player. Right, so I want you to kind of attack all aspects of it. Getting to be a role model for an 11, 10, 9-year-old kid. When we first started, I asked these kids, I was like, do you want to play against them or do you want to play with them? Every single one of them, they want to play against them. They want to play against them. So there's like 12 of them, 4 of my guys.
I would have paid to see that.
Okay, so I tell the guys, I'm like, okay, look, even with the 4 of you, you're probably going to not have much of a struggle, but make them think that they're doing well, right? First time Trenton Bradley gets the ball, he just dribbles by, pushes a kid out of the way, scores a goal, and he was like, I'm sorry, I just had to do it. And I was like, all right.
You're totally missing the whole message here. Tyler, I want to bring you in on this too. So I know that obviously we've met before, but we've never had a chance to talk about this. So I play baseball all my life, and my son, who actually just turned 20 years old, he is on the autism spectrum, and he loves baseball. He's played baseball for 5 years in a company, not a company, in an organization called Challenger Baseball. And it's in Camp Hill. And I'm one of the coaches going into my 6th season being a coach. And there's nothing more rewarding than the experience that I get to have with these kids. Many of them don't have an opportunity to play any other sports. Many of them, even struggle to get out into the community and lead a normal life. And to me, it's so rewarding to have that opportunity to be there. Do you think that was part of it too? The fact that it's rewarding to you to kind of give back to people who love the game as much as you do?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And even, to carry over with that, prior to coming up here, I was an academy coach for Liverpool FC down in Western Maryland. And the team I had that year was 07s, so they were 11, 12-year-old. Well, our team there was a lot more competitive, so to speak. These kids were there because they're supposed to be good, right? So having that experience with them, you're still kind of pushing them like I try to push these guys here. Going to a rec league team, it's all about just having fun and enjoying the game, and I love that aspect of it because at the end of the day, that's what the goal is, to have fun, to enjoy it so that you're not just going to burn out of the sport and give up. And there was one kid, and it's in the article as well, but Jordan Heil was, we're standing there, they're doing a little shooting drill where they have to do one-on-one against the defender. And this kid just crossed up defender after defender, scoring goals, and Jordan's like, so are you going to have him on the team this year, or... I told him after the practice, I went up to him and I was like, do me a favor, send me an email whenever you're in high school, all right? He was like, yes, sir. Like, perfect.
Now, Tyler, I know that you've done some coaching in your day. Can you tell me a little bit about what impact that's had on you, even in, and please go into the detail. I know that you've done it, but I don't know exactly to what extent.
Well, yeah, I've done some assistant coaching for my brother's Little League team. He plays for Cedar Cliff Youth Baseball. And growing up, I played baseball through high school, so it was always a sport that I loved and that I was passionate about. Knowing that I can kind of help my brother and some of his teammates kind of build their craft and do something that they like to do is great. But I also like kind of being that role model, stepping in. And even though I may not know everything, but I'd like to think that I have a good idea of what's going on and I can kind of teach them the right things. And one of my passions is I want to see him succeed and do good. And I'm sure, Coach Dustin Wise can talk the same thing about that, is whether you're teaching kids or college students, you want to see them do good and see them do at the best that they can play at.
And if you read Tyler's Twitter feed, he's also aspiring to be a general manager in baseball as well, because every single move the Braves make, he's got a commentary on that. I just love waking up in the morning and reading Tyler's commentary about the Atlanta Braves. Derrick, I want to come to you. Have you ever done any coaching? Have you ever worked with people? And if so, do you enjoy it, and is it rewarding to you?
Coaching little kids is so much fun, in my opinion. I've been coaching both my little brother's soccer teams for 4 or 5 years now. Not head coach or assistant coach. I'm just kind of like the volunteer coach. I usually talk to them at like halftime and whatnot. But seeing my brothers are basically my children at this point. Like, they mean the world to me. And having them be on a team with others that are so easily like teachable, because they're both at an age where you can start incorporating stuff that I learned in high school, and they'll start doing it. Seeing that throughout the practice and throughout the season and the games, it's just really inspiring for me, and it even motivates me to make me want to implement more what I learned at an older age with these kids, so they grow up with the stuff that I learned. And then on top of their head coaches, my oldest little brother, his head coach was my coach when I was 9. And I've basically been with him since then. So he knows me, I know him very well, and the relationship with the coaches are everything to me as well. But having both my brother's teammates, watching them grow up since they were little kids to now, it's really something special.
All right, one quick question, and then we're going to end with discussion about recruiting. Favorite soccer team?
I watch soccer every single weekend when it's on. I can't say I have a favorite team because I literally watch every single team every weekend. I'll wake up at 7 in the morning and watch these games till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I will say right now, not to hop on the bandwagon, but I think Liverpool is my favorite team. Their structure, their players, their coaching, their formation. I mean, it's a simple formation, but just everything that they do is so world class. I just don't understand it. They have the same formation, the same tactics every single game, and they're undefeated. They haven't lost in over a year.
Wow. Coach Wise, favorite team? Other than the Central Penn Knights, of course.
Right, of course. So, unfortunately, right now, it is the Tottenham Hotspur. We are kind of having a bad year, but that's all right. It happens.
It'll be all right. Well, I appreciate your candor. I do want to take a minute before we get out of here to talk a little bit more about the recruiting aspect of this. Not only just some of the things that you're doing, but certainly if anyone out there is listening and is interested in learning more about the program, Dustin, I will put your email along with the podcast. So I promise I'll give you a plug and give people the opportunity. But let's talk a little bit about recruiting. What is it that's obviously it's probably the biggest, most unseen part of being a coach. Can you talk to us a little bit about the recruiting process?
So recruiting is my favorite part, and even when you don't get a kid to come here, it's building the relationship with these kids. I had one kid, and I'm not going to name names because that's against all kind of rules and whatnot, but I had one kid who came to multiple games, fell in love with the program, fell in love with the players, fell in love with what I believe he fell in love with the coaching staff. And then he let me know a couple weeks ago he's going to go elsewhere. That hurts. It really does. But at the same time, you're like, look, if you need anything, I'm still here. I'm still going to help you. If things don't work out, give me a call, whatever. Tuesday of this week, I have a database of every single soccer player in the country that I can get on my radar. I sent out probably 4,000, 4,500 emails just on Tuesday to every freshman through junior, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey. I wanted to hit more states, but right now we'll keep it centralized, right? So out of that, I think I had probably 50 responses within the first couple hours. Since then, you still get emails trickling in here and there, but you look at this year's roster, Caleb's from Louisiana. I have no problem reaching out to the middle of nowhere if I need to reach out to the middle. If I'm going to find a good player, I'm going to find a good player. I'll bring them in. I don't care where you're from. That's kind of my approach. If you're out there, I'm going to find you. It might take a while, but I'm going to find you.
I love it. Now, Derrick, what was it about Central Penn that had you enthralled to come here? Obviously, you're from Middletown, so you're relatively local, but what was it about the program here that sold you?
Well, at first, I was actually accepted into 6 or 7 different colleges at first. Those just didn't work out for some reasons. And then one day my grandfather came to the house and was like, all right, so we got 2 options, Penn State Harrisburg or Central Penn. Everybody and their mother went to Penn State Harrisburg. All of my friends are at Penn State Harrisburg. So I'm like, all right, let me diversify here and go to Central Penn. Right off the bat, accelerated program. Other than the workload and a little less time, I can't name a better strategy than that. Getting it done early, love that.
It's also going to give you an extra year of earning power down the road, too, which is something a lot of people don't think about. You're 21. Dylan graduated, I want to say, literally before he was 21 years old. He graduated with his bachelor's degree at 20, and now he was very close to 21. But that's amazing.
I believe I will graduate before I'm 21 as well.
That's just unheard of. It really is. So I think that's really cool. Well, but you still have 2 more seasons of eligibility, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So hopefully we can space that out so you can play for 2 more seasons.
He can come back for his master's program. So Zach is coming back for his Masters since he missed this season because of his ACL injury.
And Zach was a key to our broadcast team as well. He called several of the games, and we were so glad that he came out too, and still somewhat involved with what you guys were doing. And he was extremely insightful. I learned a lot from listening to Zach. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for taking the time out today. Tyler, as usual, I can't thank you enough for. Let me put it to you this way. The Nightly News, working with the sports broadcasts, wouldn't be if it wasn't for you. Everything that you've done from almost day one, being a part of the first student-led broadcast in the history of the school with baseball, you were the cameraman in soccer, you wrote for the team, you're commentating basketball, we're going to be commentating baseball again here in a couple months with gloves and hats and a space heater in the booth. But honestly, man, thank you so much for everything and all that you do for Nightly News Media Club, and Central Penn Athletics.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for all of the opportunities that I've had here so far, and looking forward to the rest of the upcoming seasons we have.
And Derrick, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully this wasn't too painful of an experience for your first podcast.
No, I enjoyed it. Actually, I actually really like it.
Well, we will honestly, when we get a little closer to the season, when we start getting into practice, I want you guys to come back and preview the season because, again, this is something we want to start doing once a term, having different people from the athletics on here. We have been doing it kind of, informally, having people in, but I want to do it more frequently. So, and Coach Wise, first of all, thanks for driving down from Chambersburg. I know that's a little bit of a hike, but honestly, in hindsight, I know that the record probably maybe left you a little sour, but at the same time, you're going to have a core group of players that are going to return 1 year stronger, 1 year faster. I mean, I think that you've got everything going down the right path. And again, there was only really one game that wasn't in reach. And if you just a couple of bounces go your way, you have a 500 record, and another couple go your way, you're in the top of the division. So, but yeah, I appreciate you coming down here today and spending some time with us. Any final thoughts?
No, my pleasure. Yeah, I mean, looking back, we have a good amount of people coming back, a lot of untapped potential. Recruiting is going very well. So as long as we can finish off strong, we should hopefully talent-wise be the best team that Central Penn has had for men's soccer. Now, our schedule next season is going to be rather tough. I think 4 of the 6 teams that were in the national tournament this year are on our schedule. Majority of our games next year will be on the road. All this is my strategy to try and help us get a national tournament berth. And if we're not quite ready this year, we'll be ready next year. So
cool. Well, thank you so very much to everybody. That's going to do it for this segment of the Nightly News Podcast. Stay tuned. We'll be joined by Coach Robert Stern from the Central Penn Knights baseball team and Christian Fulp, the Nightly News co-president. But that's going to do it for this segment. So for Nightly News co-president Tyler Coleman, for to be junior soccer player Derrick Miller, and of course soccer head coach Dustin Wise. That's going to be it for today's episode, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
Hey, this is Cy Penthong. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we are sitting here today continuing our sports preview edition of the Nightly News Podcast. You just heard from Coach Dustin Wise wrapping up the Central Penn Knights men's soccer season. Now we are going to hear from Coach Robert Stern, senior leaders Christian Fulp, and Nightly News president, and of course another senior leader of the Knights, Connor Graham, for the Central Penn Knights men's baseball team. So, Coach Stern, first I'd like to welcome you back to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Of course. And this is now your second time on the podcast, so hopefully maybe not as many butterflies as the first time around.
Not today.
That's good. That's good. Well, I mean, you've definitely been in a lot of different situations. I'm sure something like this isn't going to make you too nervous. Obviously, Nightly News President Christian Fulp. Christian, we are so pleased to have you back today, and certainly appreciate your efforts on the recently concluded basketball season.
Yes. It's great to be back.
Comments on the basketball season from your perspective, having the opportunity to not only produce but also be a commentator.
It was amazing. It was my second year doing it. I feel like I got a lot of experience and credentials from it. So
hopefully you'll be a little louder. Every single time I see Christian at the game, I have to pull him aside and say, look, you have to be loud. You have to yell. But, hey, he's working on it. And I honestly have to tell you, Christian, one of the best things about you being there is you have such great insight on basketball. And I'm fully honest and transparent with everyone. I never played any type of organized basketball. Of course, we went out on shot hoops in the playground when I was a kid, but I never had the organized basketball that you had, so I appreciate your perspective, and I think that you do a great job. Unfortunately, this will be the last game that you will be calling because you will be on the field in baseball when we're calling that. So, and of course, we support you in that as well.
thank you.
Also being joined by, and we haven't had a chance to, I don't believe we've had you on since then, but the Nightly News Athlete of the Year from last season, Connor Graham. Connor, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, number one, Connor, I want to talk with you about some of the things fans of the podcast would know, that you had an excellent experience with Team USA last year, but also I wanted to give you a little bit of insight about how you were named the Nightly News Player of the Year and what our thought process was there. So, well, let's start there, Connor. First of all, here was our thought process. First of all, with our experience now into our third season calling baseball in 2020, we started in 18, and then doing basketball and soccer, we really felt that as a group, we had a lot more interaction with the sports, with the athletes. And so we went to Adrian and said, we really would like to recognize somebody that it's not just the on the field. That's a part of it. It is also the access. There are a lot of people, and again, I'm not putting anybody down because you're above and beyond, but there are a lot of people that, for example, at a recent game, Christian, we named the Nightly News Player of the Game, and they said, sorry, don't want to be on the show. and hey, more power to them. They didn't have to be, and it was no big deal. But that's a situation where we're trying to do our jobs. In the same way, just like you have people who are very, very open in press conferences or, when somebody's interviewing you, you also have the Marshawn Lynches of the world who just show up because, they don't want to get fined. You working with us, always being happy to answer questions for us, always being able to come up after the game, talk about your experience, that really is what went into it. And obviously, you had a heck of a year, too, last year. So what did that mean to you? Was that a surprise to you that you won that award?
It was a surprise. I didn't even know there was that award to begin with.
Well, you were the inaugural victor of it.
So it was pretty cool getting that award. And overall, I think it's great for the athletics at the school, and it's also just great for the image of the athletics and the school as a whole. It honestly makes me feel like athletics matter to the school, and especially having the Nightly News come out and support us and watch us and follow everything that we're doing on and off the field. It truly means a lot, and just great to be awarded that.
I appreciate that. And I hopefully someday we'll be able to get with you on the road, but I do want to make an announcement here today, and I just shared this with the gentleman. It is our full intention as the Nightly News Media Club to call every single home game this year. This is the first time we're announcing this starting on March 1st. It's on a Sunday. We'll call our first weekend game, and really the only way that it wouldn't happen is if there are rescheduled games. I am doing my PhD right now, so if it would ever be on a class weekend that I have, I might not be able to make it. But that said, we still have people who are. Brian Christiana said he would come back from because he's graduating at the end of this term, and he said he'd come back to help. We still have Tyler, we still have Tyrene, we still have several people, Parker, who are very interested in helping. And by this point, they're ready to go. Brings me to Mr. Fulp. We'd talked for a while about this season, and even maybe 6 months ago, you were still unsure on whether you were going to return for your senior year. Why was that, and why did you decide to come back?
At first, I thought I would be able to get started on my life a little bit quicker, be a part of my daughter's life a little bit more, because with school, baseball, working full time, I don't have that much time on my hands for family activities. But I realized that this is probably going to be the last time I'll ever play baseball again, so I had to enjoy it. And I got a great group of guys, a good coach, a lot of people supporting me around me. So
I don't want to say that maybe what I said mattered all that much, but I look back at obviously I didn't play at the level that you did, but I look back and even some of those last years that I missed out on, I'll never forgive myself for that. I missed out on a couple of wonderful seasons, and I think that especially with what we're doing with the nightly news, these games will be there forever. As long as YouTube exists, which I don't foresee going anywhere anytime soon, this is something that you'll be able to look back on for the rest of your life. And when your daughter gets a little older and maybe understands the game a little bit better, you can show her how one of your future no-hitters coming up, you can relive that game. I'm sure Connor relives some of his bombs from last year as well. And that's part of why we do this. Because, look, do we want the families to be a part of this and watch and tune in? Of course we do, and that's one of the main reasons we do it. But we also know that you guys can, number one, use it as a scouting tool, which I'll talk to you about, Coach Stern, in a second, but you can also use it as a way to not only get better, but really just enjoy the game. We're really glad to have you back, Christian. Now, let me ask you, Coach Stern, before we get into some of the details about the upcoming season, how have you used some of these broadcasts as a learning tool for not only yourself, but the team as well?
Well, it just goes back, and we look at some of the games and just to see how we play, how we carry ourselves on the field, see who's hustling on and off the field. I like the way when you guys come out, it gets to me to see of how everybody interacts with each other also. Like I have a rule where we want to be on the field at a certain time when we're taking defense. And I can go back to that tape and look to see if we're lollygagging by taking the field when we're getting back on defense. And Connor's over there smiling, and he knows where I'm going with that. You know what I mean? And that's a big issue because it shows the character of a team, of how you take the field or interact with your teammates at game time. It's not so much of scouting of how you play, but interaction is one thing that I'm big on with my team.
Of course. One of the things that we'd said when we had you on at the end of the season last year, Coach Stern, was how last year's team certainly had the offense, but beyond your top two pitchers didn't really have that rotation. Looking forward, looking into 2020, how have you addressed that, and what? How can we look out for the starting pitching staff?
Well, one reason I'm glad that Christian came back so he can lead our pitching staff for number one, because he's our most experienced pitcher. Right now, I have 11 freshmen that I brung in.
Which is an amazing number, by the way.
Yeah, we did have 16, but 5 fell off. So 16 was a lot, but you bring in a lot because some kids are going to fall off. But right now, we're going to roster 11 freshmen, and Christian's going to be the main focus of our pitching staff. And I got, out of 11 freshmen, there are 5 pitchers out of that 11 freshmen.
How do you set up your rotation? Because, in the major leagues, you have 6-7 games every week. You can set up your rotation a little differently. Are there any rules at this level for the amount that people can pitch? How does that work?
No, there's no rules on pitching. I'm going to set it up. Our first home doubleheader, Hayden Fox is going to start the opening day, and Christian's going to pitch the second game. Hayden's a kid from Solenco High School, and he's hitting the gun on about 86, 87 miles an hour right now. So I'm going to give him that nod and bolster our defense around him. And then Christian's going to start the second game.
And Christian, what does that mean to you to be able to start opening day, even though it's not necessarily the first game? What does that mean to you to start opening day your senior season?
It means a lot to me. The fact that, even though I'm pitching the second game, I'll be able to play in the field the first game. I love that. So I'll be able to hit and get into the game-like situations from the start. So I'll be ready.
Do you think that's an advantage to you? So from the past, when you've pitched game 2 of a doubleheader, do you think that's an advantage to be out in the field and to get the juices flowing, and then by the time the second game comes around, you're already kind of amped up?
100%. Not just because I'm amped up, just because I'm from center field, so I see every batter batting, so right behind the pitcher, so I get to look at them, see their tendencies. So
that's a really unique perspective that I guess I never really considered, because you're going to be in center, you're going to have sort of a book on what some of these guys are doing the first time around, and allow that to work with you. This year, what is the catching situation, Coach Stern?
Well, right now we have another freshman in Hunter Finke who's doing a fine job in camp right now. Max is doing a fine job also, but right now he's having some arm issues, so I don't know if he's going to be able to throw 100%. And that's big on catching. So
of course.
And also we're going to have Peyton Paletti back part time. because he's doing his internship, so that makes him eligible for the baseball season. So we're going to have 3 catchers, so that's going to be real big for us this year.
And Peyton, I got to tell you, not only was he a great catcher last year, he showed some guts on the mound as well. So if you need somebody in the late innings, I think you might have someone to turn to there as well. Well, Connor, I want to come back to you because, we had the opportunity to have you on last year at the end of the season. And number one, again, congratulations for having the opportunity to play with Team USA. Can you tell us, just briefly recap that experience and what it meant to you to have that opportunity?
We first went out to Spain, Barcelona, Spain. We first played against the 18U national team of Catalonia, so southern Spain. And then we also got to play against the 23 and over Catalonian all-star team of the men's pro teams there. So it was a great experience to see what kind of baseball Spain can bring to the table. And then after that, we went to Scotland and Edinburgh, Scotland. And we played against a makeup of the all-star professional team there. Baseball is really growing in Scotland. It's not the most competitive, but it's very fun to be a part of something and help it grow, show the guys how we play baseball back in the United States. And it's just a great, fun experience to have. But yeah, overall, I definitely would go overseas again to play ball and just keep, helping it grow across the world and just have fun playing.
I kind of know the answer to this since I follow you on Twitter. But what does it mean to you to be looking in the mirror and see USA on your chest?
Feels amazing. It feels like I'm representing if you ask me, the greatest country on earth, and where baseball is the best in the world. It feels great to be an ambassador of the sport and just show the world what they can be and what baseball's supposed to be.
I'm assuming that the record over there was very good for the USA team.
Yeah, overall, Spain gave us a run for our money. I have to admit they had quite a few ringers out there. There was a 16-year-old who was throwing over 90 miles an hour on the mound and hit a 400-foot tank over the left field wall at the Olympic Stadium there. Rumor had it that he was already signed into the Dodgers program, was just waiting to graduate high school before he came overseas, to the United States to play.
Differently, MLB really has some odd international rules. As someone who lives in the United States or Puerto Rico, you can either be drafted at 18 years old, or then you have to stay 3 years in college to 21 to be drafted. International rules are all over the board. I think they are talking about instituting some type of international draft. I don't know how that's going to go, especially since a lot of the lower market teams, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Miami Marlins of the world, that's really one of the few ways they can stay competitive, by signing and being speculative on some of these international players. So I'd be interested to see how an international draft goes. But to your point, kid 16 years old, already affiliated or signed with an organization, that kind of seems like an unfair advantage in a way, wouldn't you say?
In a way, maybe for the kids in the United States, but at the end of the day, we have more access than those guys do. That guy just put in the extra work and worked harder, and I guess maybe he had access to other resources that we didn't. But at the end of the day, we don't know the full story on it, so I don't.
Of
really
course,
have,
no, and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want you to speculate. I'm just
Right.
just in a general sense. I understand that you also continued to play baseball after the summer, and in October you got to play in a program called Sports at the Beach. Can you share a little bit with us about that experience?
Yeah, so I actually got contacted on Facebook by a guy reaching out to fill a couple of holes in their lineup to compete at Sports at the Beach in Rehoboth, Delaware.
I would say you're more than filling a hole.
So we got to compete in the 18 over competition or tournament there. We actually ended up coming in second place and had an all right outing that weekend, just getting back into the groove. Hadn't played for a couple of months, so it was really knocking off the rust for the fall. But overall, it was a great experience, and I was happy to partake in it.
Awesome. Well, I do want to take a look forward to the upcoming season, Coach Stern. All right, so Coach Stern, I see this year you have 36 games on your schedule. Everything's going to get started here March 1st, Sunday at 2 o'clock at In the Net in Palmyra for a doubleheader against Penn State Schuylkill. It's going to be followed up on Wednesday, March 4th by a doubleheader at home in the Net, Penn State Hazleton. You'll travel to Valley Forge on the 7th and then return back home on March 11th for Williamson Trade. 6 of 8 to get the season started at In the Net. the Nightly News will be there supporting you. What was your thought process on maybe making the schedule the way that you did? I noticed that there's a lot of new teams on here, teams that maybe had been on in the past, but for one reason or another didn't work out. Tell me a little bit more about the schedule.
Well, we just wanted to get teams that were local to us who we hadn't played in the past, and just to see if we can get a good relationship of playing them year and out every year.
How much input do you have when it comes to creating the schedule?
About 50-50 with the AD.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that was always very interesting to me is you would often talk about how it would be on there, but then, I'm talking to Casey too about how it went in. So I think that's interesting that the collaboration that goes in there. So some of the new teams, I especially want to take notice to the March 23rd and 25th games at Mid-Atlantic Christian and at Apprentice. So you're going to be going on a little road trip here.
Yes, sir. We're going to North Carolina to play Mid-Atlantic Christian University, which this is their second year for their program down there. They're actually a D3 program, though, and right now they have 28 guys rostered. So it's not like the program is new, but I'm pretty sure they have a good program. Now,
how did you get this all set up? Do you have personal connections down there? Did they reach out to you?
He reached out to me last year, and then our former AD set it up for us to travel down there during our spring break.
And it's got to be great for the guys because the term's going to be over. You're going to be able to be laser focused on this road trip. And to be honest, that is a really important stretch in the schedule because you do come back for Christendom and then Clark Summit. But outside of that, from the 11th to the following 20th, only 4 of about 12 to 14 games are going to be at home. So it's going to be a really important stretch to the schedule being, competitive on that road trip.
Well, that's why it's good for us to get off to a good start. I expressed to the guys while we've been working out over the wintertime that we need to get off to a real good start. And those first 6 games, we should be 5-1. I have no doubt that we can't be 5-1 those first 6 games.
I love the confidence. Christian, let me ask you, and Connor, you certainly can chime in on this question as well. Coach Stern mentioned the 11 freshmen. With both of you being seniors, let me first ask you this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be here at Central Penn, because I know it doesn't necessarily apply in this case. When you were a new player somewhere, what impact did it have for you to have maybe one of the elder statesmen on a team take you under their wing?
It means a lot at all times when something like that happens, just because you know that they've been there before and you haven't, so you have zero experience. Just hearing what somebody that's been through it has to tell you means that you could just prep and get ready and just practice and perfect your craft, and just when it's your time to step foot in a situation, you'll be all right. So it's a great thing when somebody can do that, and now that I'm in the role, I want to make the most of that.
So have you? I mean, I know the season hasn't started yet, but have you taken advantage of that?
So far, I catch myself sometimes because, like I said, it's my last year playing baseball, so I want to have fun. I want to be just like a kid, but I remember when I was a freshman that I needed some structure, so I know that I had to be like the backbone, so I always catch myself when I'm slipping a little bit.
You know, it's funny. I don't know if you heard our most recent podcast. Brian, obviously, is graduating. We had a final podcast with him and Tom Russell from CBS 21 and Bob Hauer from River 97.3, who are both have sort of mentored Brian. And I told him about a time that I gave him crap when he came in late to a meeting and he was kind of in a bad attitude that day. And I looked at him and I said, look, all these people look up to you, and the way that you act, they're going to think that it's okay for you to come in late to meetings and to not have, and I kind of give you a hard time sometimes whenever you come to the club meetings late, and because people like Tyrene, for example, looks up to you. So if you're coming in late, he's gonna say, well, hey, Christian's the president of this club, I'm gonna come in late. I know Coach Stern says the same thing to you now. You have to set the tone, because if you don't set the tone, then those 11 freshmen aren't gonna have somebody to look up to and kind of get an idea of what's to be expected. So I know that you're gonna keep that in your mind. Connor, has there ever been somebody when you were new to a different organization that's sort of seen your immense potential and has sort of taken you under their wing?
Of course, definitely. I still keep in contact with those couple of guys to this day. They cheer me on social media and everything, and are 100% supportive of me. The effect that they had on me is immense. They gave me confidence day in, day out. They were constantly supportive. They held me accountable and always pushed me. Being a freshman, and I was one of them, you come in quite timid or kind of, because you're you're coming in as a boy, and you're playing with and against grown men. So it's it's a little bit of a shock. And when these guys come in and they see you come in and they support you and give you that push, that drive, and hold you accountable, it's really self-assuring to get you to move in the right direction and actually make you become a better baseball player. I wouldn't be the ball player that I am today if it weren't for those few guys that really pushed me.
I got to tell you, the same thing could be said in a lot of different places. Like Coach Stern, he wasn't always Coach Stern. There was a day that he managed his first game ever, and having people around you. Professor Miller, I told this story in class today. Yeah, I've been doing this since 2013. I almost threw up before I walked in my first classroom because I was so nervous. I'd never taught a class before. But you know what? There were people here who looked at me and said, hey, this kid's got something. I just need to help show him the way. For both of you, yes, you're the anchors of the team, but you're also expected to set the tone for the team and keep these 11 freshmen in line, because the way that you operate also leaves a legacy, either positive or negative, for you going forward, because these kids are going to be on a team for another 3-4 years, and they're going to be seniors and say, what, I remember Connor Graham, I remember Christian Fulp. They taught me how to win. They taught me how to be a good ball player. Because as much as Coach Stern is an impact on these people, you all both are as well. So I hope that in some small way that is helpful. I don't want you to think like I'm getting on your case here, but it's very true. Wouldn't you say, Coach Stern?
Most definitely.
How do you approach the seniors differently, and maybe to try to get a little bit more out of them in terms of mentorship for the young players?
Well, basically, I think the seniors know what I expect out of them since they've been around me for about 2-3 years now. They come into practice, they know the routine that we have to start with every day, so they get things started. So basically, I don't have to harp on them as much as I did in the past.
That's great. Well, it seems that you've got some wonderful people. So it's Christian and Connor and Max and is Peyton considered a senior?
Yeah, Peyton, Jared, and Freddie Barr.
So you're going to have a strong group coming in this year, and it's something that you all have an obligation to the new guys to make sure that you make them feel welcome, but also show them the ropes and show them how to hit 400-foot home runs, yeah. Connor. And
show me some too.
And Christian, show them how to make acrobatic catches and fall over the fence in the net, making a game-saving play. So, well, gentlemen, I do want to. We're going to say goodbye for another podcast, but first of all, I wish you the best. I'm going to be there with you at every home game. I'm going to be supportive of you. I hope if you ever need anything from me that you let me know. Connor, I know you're an amateur video editor, so if you ever actually need the raw footage as opposed to just trying to pull it from YouTube, I can take care of that for you. Certainly, we're going to have photos. We're going to be reporting on every game. You're our number one fans for Central Penn Knights men's baseball is going to be the Nightly News Media Club, and hopefully you're able to share the word with your family and anybody out there listening. You can always find the games by going to gocpcknights.com for the schedule or by searching for the Nightly News at Central Penn College on YouTube. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Coach Stern, we'll start with you.
Nope, just looking for a good season and hope our fans come out and enjoy the ride.
Small College World Series or bust, right?
Yes.
Yep, that's it.
Definitely.
Christian, any final thoughts before I want to have all you guys back after the season, but any final thoughts in terms of what you're looking forward to this season?
I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
My last thoughts would be I'm shooting to make it back to the Small College World Series. I've been craving it since I got there my freshman year, 17. I'm now 21, so I think it's overdue. So,
is your daughter going to get to come see any games this year?
Yeah, she's gonna come. She's gonna come do a lot of them.
Well, so hopefully when that happens, I get an introduction.
Of course.
Okay, cool. Connor, I guess my final question to you would be, how do you follow up last season? I mean, you won every single award you possibly could. You won the Nightly News Player of the Year. You won several other awards here at the school. You won several awards outside of the school. I mean, how do you top that?
I don't know if you really can. I just got to do it again.
Well, and obviously staying healthy, I'm sure in your mind is obviously a number one thing to talk about, but you've got it all right there. You're one of the leaders of the team, and we just wish you the best of health and best of luck this season because you have a very bright future in front of you with baseball. So, well, gentlemen, thank you all so very much for joining us today on the Nightly News Podcast. This is a very special episode. This is actually the first fully entire sports podcast we've done, so we really appreciate you joining us. And, tune in March 1st at 2 o'clock to the Nightly News at Central Penn YouTube as we watch the baseball team. So thank you all, gentlemen, so very much. For Coach Robert Stern, for Nightly News President, center fielder, and opening day pitcher Christian Fulp, and for left fielder Connor Graham, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.